Can you handle the truth? Welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show. I'm your guest host, Jeffrey Matt. Once again, I've been given the opportunity to fill in as a guest host. Tonight, we have a really good lineup. We have Jordan, who's back again this evening. We're going to continue discussing what I would consider important information about what's going on out there in the world of alternative news and radio. And also, and for the first hour, it's with Jordan. And the second hour, we have a special guest as well, Max Egan. And so this is a great opportunity to speak with him about what's going on with him. And there's a special project I'm going to be talking about that I think everybody needs to know about in the second hour. So please stay tuned for that. And so, Jordan, I just want to see if you're there. Are you there, Jordan?
Well, I'm here, but I'm not all here, but I'm here. So, yeah, I'm always happy to be on the show with you, and you've been doing a great job and covering for me. And so here I am, and I'm on with my guest host.
It's more of an inquiry from the audience that I figured I would follow through on their request, and I'm curious too as well. And then about one of the subjects we talked about in the last show about some of the people you have worked with in the industry, people you've seen who are really cutting edge.
Let me go on and say that I'm really happy to be able to get back on radio. I've had so many distractions and so many difficulties, and so I'm really happy that Jeffrey's been able to cover for me, and he's doing very, very interesting work himself. Actually, he's doing some very important work, and but I'd rather let him explain what he's doing. But he's talking about the ability to or at least some of the things we've talked about that he wants to talk about tonight, was the redesigning of the human race, how we are being phased out. Well, I was just going to say, well, there's so many interesting things to talk about, but you have a couple of important projects you've been working on, and you've been talking about some of it in the past few weeks. And so maybe we could talk about the follow-up on some of the newer things that you have found in relation to your research and what you're doing. So I'll give it to you, let you handle the show.
Absolutely.
I'm here if you want to throw something at me. I'm here.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Yes, with the research that I've been doing, if it wasn't for your research, Jordan, and it wasn't someone who's dedicated this much time, the industry, the ideas, the concepts, the knowledge to research this kind of stuff of where we come from, how do things actually work. I was really put in my place in a good way when you said nobody knows how things actually work. And I've been trying to chisel away at that ignorance that I have in my understanding of how the world works for a long time. You've been doing it a lot longer than me, but my research has brought me to subjects that are becoming more and more popular. Artificial intelligence, transhumanism has already been discussed, and it's really taken a life of its own in the last year.
Yeah, it sure has. Yeah.
It's really exploded, but I think the next step, and I'm noticing it's not really out there yet, and it's something I want to bring to the forefront because it has everything to do with where we're going, and it has a direct connection to your research that you've been doing for over 5 decades, and it's synthetic biology. Other people will call it artificial life, where you can basically create DNA strands in a laboratory. You can even order it over the internet. You can order if you know how to read the genetic code, you can go on the internet and say, I want the GATACC, whatever it is, the code, that string that is. If you know how to do the science, you can actually order it over the internet and get it. It's really incredible. It doesn't mean everybody can get it, but it is available. You just have to be part of a scientific outfit. And there's people out there who are really gung-ho about, I can't wait to fiddle around with the human genome, and they're wearing their, $1,000, $1,200 suit and $800 shoes, and they're just delighted to tell us all about it. But in reality, they're either extremely pleased with their salary and they love the idea that they have a unique job, but they don't have the scope or the perspective or the education or the knowledge of what they're actually involving themselves with. And this is really where I wanted to get your insight. A man who's been around all the way since JFK was unfortunately taken out of the Book of Life. And he had a famous speech talking about conspiracies and secret societies and all that. Now I still re-listen to that little 2-minute speech that he had about that, and I'm still blown away that the president was able to eloquently explain that. Mm-hmm. So we're going from pre-computer days all the way to now. You can get your own cloned pet if you want in South Korea for only $100,000, and you can freeze dry yourself. And now we can just design people, and this is stuff really over the top stuff. So I want to know, what are your thoughts on this mutation of humanity and where it's going?
Well, I think, and I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. I've been listening to some of the most extraordinarily brilliant minds that we have on the earth today, which are just down to earth, regular guys who have extraordinary knowledge and work that they have been doing that just blows me away. And two of them on the top list of my heroes and people who I really am fascinated with, and that is Peter Levenda. And Peter Levenda has done some incredible work on these subjects that you and I are talking about. And Joseph Farrell. Joseph is a dear friend, and I've talked with him often. And Joseph Farrell, I think, has opened the door, along with Peter Levenda, to the subject that you're now talking about. So I think that these subjects of DNA and reproducing of humans and all this new technology is coming out, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. I know exactly what's going on with that. All of this stuff is being promoted by, financed, organized, and directed by what Joseph Farrell calls the Nazi International. He talks a lot about the Nazi International, and so does Peter Levenda. Very eloquently talks about the whole world system is being operated behind the scenes, behind the world governments, by a incredible otherworldly power of prior Nazi scientists, physicists, theoreticians. The whole entire Nazi apparatus is well and doing just fine, and they're doing what they wanted to do to start with and what they were capable of, and that is taking over and redesigning the whole human race. And that's what Hitler wanted to do. That's what the whole, quote, new world order that Hitler kept talking about. All you have to do is go back and look at what Adolf Hitler was saying and what he was talking about doing. And he kept the Nazis continually kept publicizing that what they were looking to do and what they were organized to do was to completely collapse the entire world system of mankind and then recreate it with the high technologies that they were getting from somewhere. And they kept talking about how they were going to bring about a new order of humans on the earth, a whole new kind of life form on the earth, and which they would be a master race. And so when you're talking about the kind of thing that you've been looking into recently. Well, there's a lot more we need to hear from you about that. But I see all of this that you're talking about as purely Nazism 101 today. Because the Nazis, from all indication, are not just still alive, but they are in control, period. They are absolutely in control of our banking system, of our educational, military-industrial complex. It looks like the Nazi movement is not what you thought it was. Most people think of Nazism as this little arcane group of Germans who were delusional and had the idea about world domination, and they were financing and backing out of Hitler. But no. Nazism actually began in America. It began in Los Angeles, and I was there back in the 50s. Nazism began. The concepts that later became known as Nazism were dreamt up and developed in a city called Studio City in Los Angeles. And Studio City is just a suburb, one of the suburb cities of Los Angeles, in the West Los Angeles. And it's out in the San Fernando Valley. But it is a very, very hot spot for wealthy movie stars and all the big shots of industry. They all lived up in the Hollywood Hills. And so we now have lots of books and people who are writing about how the Hollywood Hills, and especially the city of Studio City, was a hot spot for Nazism. They were developing ideas about mind control and IQ tests to test the IQ of people so that they could find the smart people to work for the Nazis, and the poor people, throw them out under the truck, throw them under the bus. And so this whole idea of a whole new civilization and a recreation of the human family and all of this, all of these subjects are all coming together. And the people who made it available to us is, as I said, Joseph Farrell and Peter Levenda, because these guys are sensational when you listen to the history that they are bringing out about Nazism and how today the Nazis are very, very powerful. They're very powerful behind they are the actual power behind the euro, the new euro that's going on right now, and Europe, and all the stuff that's going on with the destruction of Europe, and the pouring in of revolutionaries and radicals and murderers pouring into Europe and destroying it. This is the Nazi movement today. And if you don't understand what's going on, you need to go back and listen to Joseph Farrell and Peter Levenda talking about what they're referring to as the Nazi International, an international world movement to destroy civilization and rebuild it and start all over again and put everybody into a computerized world system where there will be no freedom, no liberty, no joy, no nothing. It will be computerized and you will do what you're told. So that's why I feel the work you're doing and talking about is so important, because it's right on target with what's happening today. Mass mind control and the destruction of human civilization. So that's my feeling about it.
Well, I not only is that extremely important, I'm glad you brought those two names up, and it's for the listeners who aren't familiar, please check out those two names, Joseph Farrell, and the second name is Peter Levenda, and you'll see that these two gentlemen they excel in their research. They're really top guys. But I want to add to that as well. I think for me, one of the things I find so important to try to enunciate and tell people, the listeners out there, if you're just new to this show, welcome aboard. But if you've been around the block and you've heard a lot of stuff, I find that the psychology of the average individual, which I consider myself one, is that we get stuck. And we hear something, oh, it's the New World Order. Well, that's George Bush Sr., and then we forget about it, and then it's the banking, and then we forget about it, and then it's the military-industrial complex, and we forget about it. The New World Order is unfolding every day. It's unfolding in all these different branches of the human psyche, of science and politics and money. It's not just one thing at a time. But the one part that I think is very important is this synthetic biology. And the reason why I'm bringing this up again is because if people are worried about artificial intelligence, all that is just a computerization of a gang. It's a gang. It's put into a computer software program of thousands of hours of programming, and millions of examples of either other people's work, examples of other people's labor, and the machine learns from everybody else's mistakes. And then when you go up against AI, you're not going up against a robotic human or an ATM. You're going up against basically an army. And so then, well, people are, oh, goodness, I'm worried about that. That's not really the threat. That's going to be a convenience for maybe another generation where you get better health options if you really, really obey and you get on your knees and you just sort of do what you're very compliant, then you'll enjoy certain features of artificial intelligence for shopping and for food and for medicine. But after that, the real key to all this is that they're going to phase out humans. Because if you have this high technology that's irradiating everybody, like 5G, which is basically in the same range as an airport scanner, and you're living inside basically a microwave environment, and they're going to put up a wall probably in southern United States. Well, basically it's an outdoor prison. And that outdoor prison is going to be monitored, and if you're an illegal immigrant or if you're doing something wrong, you're toast. There's companies like E-Verify that will eliminate you even if you're not an immigrant or you're not illegal. You don't have the right kind of credit history. You've been moving from one apartment to the next too often because you've had problems, or we don't want to hire unstable people. And you're going to be filtered and weeded out. But what's going to open that door is to new types of life. And it's going to start out with something innocuous. So I don't want my dog to get doggy cancer. And so you'll order your dog with genetically synthetic biology. You'll be able to order your pets so that they can stay puppies an extra year longer, and it'll look very innocuous and really fun and simple. And all you need is money. And then it'll move up to children and designer babies. And then it'll be into the farming arena. We don't want trees that can get disease, Dutch elm disease, and all this stuff. So they'll fabricate new genetic codes of new trees, new insects, new flowers, because they don't want the flower to wilt. The rose will stay fresh for an extra 20 days. And eventually, next thing you know, 2 or 3 generations going by, nothing is original. The way that you and I grew up and understood life as it is. And you're going to have to barely keep up with all the new artificial life that's coming out there. So you're going to have to go through the transhumanist movement where you upgrade yourself with cyborg materials, not just an iPhone in your pocket. I mean, you're going to have to implant stuff in your body just to be able to keep up. And finally, they're going to phase it all out. And so, but the way that they're going to do this to get to this point is they're going to do 2 basic moves. They're going to make your private life public. And so everything that you do privately is going to be public. That's like a platform understanding. If anybody walks away anything from this entire show tonight, is that your entire life and your children's entire life will become public, period. And then once all that is done, now you're going to feed the artificial intelligence, which is going to have now enough material to actually follow through and create synthetic life with real data. That's really the point, one of the major goals of artificial intelligence that's not being discussed anywhere, period, is that they need the data so that if they're going to create a synthetic life form and 3D print it in their laboratory, they want to put a personality, or they can pick from 5 billion personalities that were on the internet in the last 5 years or 10 years. and another 5 billion people are coming onto the internet in the next, by the year 2025, 5 billion new people are going to be on the internet browsing and using, all the technologies, all their shopping needs, and if they want to date and, the whole thing is so. I don't know. What do you think, Jordan? You think?
Well, I've been looking into this whole thing of GMO foods, and I discovered that some of the governmental outlets for information, some of the white papers that have been developed by universities that are working with the government on the situation called GMO foods, genetically modified foods. Some of those reports are talking about, but nobody is reading it. Nobody cares much about it. But some of the reports are talking about that the GMO food thing that's happening is part of something far, far bigger. They're talking about that they're going to GMO the human race. And so the GMO human race, genetically modified humans, that the government is working with right now and is probably being organized, directed, and financed by the Nazi International, because that's exactly what Hitler was wanting to do, is to completely computerize and to get the entire human race into compliance to go along with the government. And whatever the government said, they were God. And if you don't think so, then they'll deal with you and show you that they're as close to God as you're going to get. And so this whole idea of GMO was actually part of a genetically modifying the people. And so I've been reading some of these articles about genetically modified food is being prepared the same time that the human race is being genetically modified. And so I see this because I've talked with other researchers and writers on this, and I see this very clearly and very plainly, that the powers that be on this earth are not human. They don't give a damn about your mother and your brother and your sister and your family, or you as a human being. They couldn't care less. They're genetically modifying humans. And why? It's because the Nazi International, this monstrous, ancient and monstrous organization that was financing, organizing, and directing this Adolf Hitler, is also today directing the world we live in. It's a monstrous organization. And so what they are doing is they want to eventually computerize and genetically modify the whole human family on Earth, and the reason why it should be overwhelming and obvious, because then they won't have to try and control you and throw you into prisons and into concentration camps. And they won't have to worry about you throwing up a revolution or other problems, because you will have finally become a non-human. All of your ability to think is gone. Your ability to use reason and logic is gone. The only way you exist is through a computer. You got computers in your wrist, and computers in your chest, and computers in your heart. And so eventually the masters of this monstrous plot against the human race want to get everybody into a computer. And once you're in the computer will tell you when you can get up, when you go to bed, what you can do, what you can't do, and where you will eat, and it will know everything about you from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. It will be all computerized, so that our masters, the masters of this world, will not have to worry and fret about how they're going to control you. Once they get the whole human race digitized and put into a computer and everybody is going along to get along, and you have to, or they will get rid of you, then they will finally have accomplished Hitler's dream of a new world order in which there will be no more wars, no more fighting, no more nothing, and no more freedom, liberty, and justice and entertainment and human experience. No more of that bull at all. No more bull about freedom and liberty and human love and all that kind of thing. That's all gone. The human race will be a computerized, inhuman, robotics in which artificial intelligence and the robotics will control our world from a computer so that the masters of this world can sit back and they don't have to worry about the human race anymore. We're all computerized and we're all in compliance, and the few people who were smart enough to know what was going on, they are dead. They were taken out and assassinated or put to death. And so I've been watching this stuff go on for many, many, many years. And Hollywood's been telling you, Hollywood's been making movies. There's so many movies that come out, it's hard to remember all of them that have been telling you the same story. But there was 1938, Charles Laughton made a movie called The Island of Lost Souls. And then in 1965, Burt Lancaster remade that movie called The Island of Dr. Moreau. And then the last year or so that Marlon Brando was alive, his very last movie before he passed was called The Island of Dr. Moreau. And if you can go and find that on the web or buy it or do whatever you can to get Island of Dr. Moreau, because it shows you how the masters of this world, what they're planning for us. They are planning to make the world into a computerized, demonic depravity so there will be no more freedom, no more human race, no more humanity, period. From here on out, everybody dances to the same tune because you're in the computer. And if you're not, you don't eat. You don't even exist. So that's what I think we're all heading. And this is the kind of thing you really need to go on the web and listen to Joseph Farrell and Peter Levenda, because these two guys are on the cutting edge of this kind of stuff. And so are you, Jeffrey, with your particular part of what you've been researching and looking into. So I think this whole subject is monstrous, just absolutely frightening. But it's here and it's in your face, and you better wake up and start looking at it, because that's what's coming down the line, a world computerized state of people who are in compliance to the government and people who don't realize they're losing their humanity and they're losing their families, they're losing their children. They are losing, period. So,
well, I'm glad you explained all this, because for a while I thought, oh goodness, maybe I'm not seeing it clearly, but this is the magic of your work and your lifelong sacrifices, that when you present information and you represent, you say it again, it takes on a new life, because as other people's research comes out, it validates over and over and over. But the thing is that you're talking about these movies from the 30s. There's one movie in particular. It's not a doom and gloom, but it's a BBC movie. It's called Code 46. For those of you out there, if you're looking for an extremely high action movie, forget it. Don't watch it. But if you want to see an example of what's coming down the pipe for humanity, it's called Code 46. And so, yeah, I should check that out. And also, too, I really think that this kind of work, for those of us who want to know, this is an opportunity to make better quality decisions, because as the system continues to implement this outdoor prison environment, and with these these Nazi programs that are rolling out through corporations, through multinationals, through transnationals, there's a difference between international and transnational, and people need to understand these kinds of these sort of mental frameworks that you can work through, where you can say, all right, there's artificial intelligence, and then there's transhumanism, and then there's synthetic life, but how does it fit into my life right now? It's manifesting every day, and people like Jordan and other people out there with their research, like Joseph and Peter Levin and Joseph Farrell, they're going to help you get more perspective. But going back to the genetic evolution, they're in the process right now of extending and growing the genetic alphabet. And so if you want to know more about this and do your own homework, there's a website called the Genetic Library Project. And, they say it clearly underneath, science, not ideology. Genetic Literacy Project, my apologies, Genetic Literacy Project.org. And if you just check it out and then read it, some of the stuff is dry. And also look up George Church. He's basically one of the godfathers behind this whole synthetic life thing. And, if you really want to take a closer look up George Church. And, this is where you can start your research on all this, and you'll start to understand why AI is being put into place and why they're rushing all this 5G technology into place. It's not just so you can shop with ease and your fridge orders more milk when you're running low. That's a temporary window. It's like a drug dealer who hands you drugs saying, I hope you like it. You go home, you enjoy the drugs, whatever it is, and then about 6 months later or 3 weeks later or a year later, you're in trouble. But that first year, that first 6 months is great. Well, in human terms and in corporate terms and in the financial world, the countries have to go through a bankruptcy cycle of 7 years. And so 20 years for a human life to evolve something technologically is nothing. So if it takes 20, 30 years to make your whole world a theme park, and all your electronics are reading everything you're doing, your clothes has microchips in it, your food has microchips, and then later on it's going to be fashionable to say, well, I have indigestion every once in a while, and your doctor will give you sort of like a biodegradable a pill that degrades after 24 hours, but it'll read what's happening on the inside of your body, and you should stay away from red wine, and you should stick to white wine. It'll give you all these recommendations, and the AI will confirm the whole thing. Well, that's just sort of like the candy. That's like the high that you're getting. But once they can recreate a complete human being, and they don't, why would they need you? Why would they need you at all? They can just build whoever they want. And now they have billions of minds and billions of personalities to pick from, and then they can implant that into the genetically engineered human or animal if they're choosing. So the human family is not going to make it to 30 billion, and then we're going to go to all the other planets and open Fat Burgers and JC Penney's. That's not what's going to happen. It's that we're going to be phased out, like Jordan has been saying for a long time.
Yep, we're going to be phased out, and there's no doubt about that, because right now the human race is being phased out if you know what to look for.
Yeah.
Because slowly but surely mankind is becoming more violent and more lunacy. I mean, the things that you're reading about that kids are doing today are the kind of thing that people are doing today by going into restaurants and mass murdering 19 people and all the lunacy of the human race, all the violence and corruption and perversion and filth and all the lunacy and cage fighting and it wasn't bad enough with heavyweight boxing where two guys are going in there and beat each other's brains out for the mafia and for the international cartels who are betting a lot of money on the fight, who's going to kill who first. But now they've even got cage fighting, where they're animalistic. They're not just boxing. They're trying to kill each other. And you will see the audience for those kind of fights are enormous. They fill hotels with thousands of people paying huge sums of money to watch two humans, beat each other to a pulp. And so this is the kind of entertainment which is coming. It's slowly but surely they are breeding a whole new kind of creature. So we're going to be like dogs and animals. We already are. But we're gonna be seeing a whole change of the direction of the human evolution. We're evolving into a dark, sinister, evil, violent world, and slowly but surely we're getting worse by the day. And eventually we will have finally rubbed out of our earth. We will have rubbed out any vestige of humanity and decency left in the human family, because the old people who are they're the holders of the tradition, the grandmothers and grandfathers and the parents who love their children and who have worked hard to build America and to build their country and to build their homes. Those old people are dying. And in their place are coming multiple millions of young people who have no idea they're even alive. They just eat and consume, and their whole life is around sex, the fast cars, Hollywood, all the lunacy and drugs, and it's just amazing how the whole human race is being transformed right in front of your eyes. But very few people have the maturity and the insight, the spiritual insight to see where this whole monstrosity of the human family on the earth is slowly but surely being guided to. Our destiny as a human family has been destroyed, and now we're being redirected into a dark hellhole from which I don't believe, once mankind finally reaches the end of the line, and we're almost there, there will never be a time when mankind will regain their humility, their human spirit. I don't believe that will ever happen again. I think that the entire human race will finally have been raped and destroyed beyond recognition, so that humans will not even know how to be human again. And if somebody did, they will be so computerized, electronically controlled, that they have no choice but to live in the system that's been designed for them. And there will be no choice given to you at all to be human, to care about your mother, to care about your family, to care about your children, to care about truth and righteousness and decency and anything human. There will be no room for any of that because of what is coming. And so I have always said, and I still believe it, that the people who are running this planet today are not human. I think they look like us, but they're not like us. They're not human. They have no connection to us whatsoever. So they are able to do what they want to do to the human family and to human beings. And we think that they're humans, and then we go out and crawl on our knees to be in their company, never realizing they are not human. They have nothing to do with the human race. And I've got a lot of material. I've been looking at that subject for a long time. Wow. We humans are having our destiny directed by non-humans. And, Christians can talk about demons and devils, and Islam can talk about the jinns, and the Jews can talk about all the demonic entities and all of that, and then throw in the UFO and the alien question. But ultimately, the human family is becoming slowly but surely non-human, genetically modified. And we're losing all contact with what God created the human to be. We're losing contact with that. Today, it's totally all artificial, and our destiny is locked in. And the only thing I would say to people who understand what I'm talking about is to protect your humility, protect your humanity, protect yourself and your family by not buying into the system that we live in. The system is corrupt and evil. So
Wow.
I hope you can understand what I am seeing, because I'm seeing it because for 58 years I've been talking about it. And I was talking about the kind of thing that's happening now. I was talking about it some 56 years ago. So I've watched the world slowly but surely going under. And the whole entire human race is going with it. So, you see what happened to the Roman Empire? Well, stick around and watch what's going to happen to the earth. It's an incredible story.
I'm sorry to mean to cut you off. I was just curious because you're mentioning such important information. Is that a few points I wanted to just add to, and then see if this makes sense of where I'm coming from with my research. Is that the human in the Western world, and when they add the extra 5 billion people on the internet using social media, the attention span is floating around on the internet that it was brought under 8 seconds. I think even a Microsoft website was talking about it, where it's less than a goldfish. So if a human's attention span has been reduced even by a few seconds, even if it's incorrect, from average supposedly of around 12 seconds down to under 8, when 8 is under a goldfish's attention span. And then you look at what you were saying before, that this new generation, they're eating and they're just worried about eating and looking good and having sex.
Yep.
If I look at an experiment that was done in the 50s by John Calhoun, if I remember the name correctly, he did this thing called Rat City and Mouse Utopia, and basically one of the final generations of these places where they had all the food they wanted, that nobody prevented them from having sex, and there was no predators, so you could just relax. There's a generation called the beautiful ones, and they didn't fight, they didn't do anything. They just sat there and ate and groomed themselves and did nothing, and they just basically wasted away. They didn't have a personality. Their IQ was down. And so I'm comparing it to the human's attention span going down to under a goldfish, because we're constantly getting updates, and so the goldfish is somehow surpassing me, which I'm a little disappointed. And also the idea that the military or the science world or the people who run the show are using these scientific experiments. I think even Mr. Calhoun ended up visiting the Pope. You don't meet the Pope by chance. You meet the Pope because you're onto something. And the other person named Craig Venter, he was supposedly the man who was the first to publicly acknowledge synthetic life. He got a letter from the Pope within a couple days. It's congratulations. He didn't get it 18 years later. He got it like almost immediately. And so I found something on the internet, Jordan. This is what I want to sort of wrap up on this subject, because there is something else that I want to talk to you about that the audience was asking about, and it's in a different arena. But before we go to that, I just wanted to mention there was a genetics, synthetic biology, sort of like a conference that happened in Toronto last year, at the end of last year. And I was looking at it, and at the bottom it was saying who's sponsoring it, and it was there's 2 out of the 5 sponsors I found interesting. It's the Canadian Council of Churches and the World Council of Churches. And I'm thinking to myself, I thought their job, because I was raised in a Catholic environment up here in Quebec. It's very Catholic here. Every town is named Saint something. And they even have one of the holy doors of the world is in Quebec City. So it's very Catholic here. But why would the church be involved in wanting to sponsor and financially, they're not there just to, hand out juice boxes. They're behind finding out what synthetic biology and the new genetic engineering and ethics is involved. And so and then when you mentioned Joseph Farrell and Peter Levenda with the Nazi connection, I'm wondering if the Vatican is not involved behind the scenes, sort of as a management team, orchestrating how they want to see the movement go, which direction it's going, and how they're going to influence it. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Harry, Joseph Farrell and Peter Levenda are exposing to the light of day the really dark secrets of the world conspiracy. I mean, they are really well informed and highly intelligent, and I'm amazed because I'm only amazed with people who can tell me something I've never heard before and can teach me, because I've been looking at these subjects for some 56 years. But Joseph Farrell and Peter Levenda, and that's Levenda, Peter Levenda, and Joseph Farrell, Farrell, are two of the best on the earth today. And so when I look at what they're doing and talking about, and it's frightening even to me. But when you talked about these two organizations, the World Council of Churches and the Canadian Council of Churches, well, I knew back in 1950, I was talking and giving lectures about a man named Harry Elmer Barnes. Harry Elmer Barnes. And he was the man, one of the main people who founded the World Council of Churches. And he was one of the major people who founded the ecumenical movement, the World Council of Churches. And he was trained in Moscow. He was a Soviet agent. He was promoting Soviet communism, Marxist philosophy, but he was in charge of, Harry Elmer Barnes was in charge of infiltrating Christianity in the Western Hemisphere with Marxist-Leninist ideology, with the whole communist philosophy of life, and how to eventually take over the churches, Christianity, Judaism, take over the religions of the world, and be able to guide the religious destiny of the human race from Moscow and from other points on the map, which were hot spots for the Illuminati secret societies who were doing all of this stuff behind the scenes. And so Harry Elmer Barnes, as I said, was one of the main people who founded the World Council of Churches, and all the different churches, the Methodist Church especially, but all the others, the Baptist Church. Methodists are really heavily involved because Harry Elmer Barnes was a Methodist minister. And so you begin to see how the churches and the big international church organizations were communist, Marxist-Leninist, Soviet operations going on to manipulate the whole world into following the Marxist-Leninist line that the state was the all-encompassing divine presence on the earth was the state. And each man must crawl on his knees and be in compliance with the financial cabal and the maddening Nazi fascist dictatorships around the world, and everybody was going to crawl on their knees, and you do that in the name of the Lord because you're a member of the World Council of Churches. And so Christians had no idea in the world what was going on with the World Council of Churches. And today people are still joining, and they're still here, the World Council of Churches. You know, every now and then pops up that they're doing something on the international stage. But people have no idea this World Council of Churches goes way back into the 40s and connected to the Nazi Party, and then in the 50s with the coming of the Soviet Union and the communist movement. So the churches themselves are actually hellholes of Marxist communism, all kinds of filthy, degenerate stuff that are going on today. And people just keep giving them money. It tells you something about the IQ of America. You want to talk about a sick program, talk about the IQ of the American people, because you've got millions of people in the Midwest and the South who are Christians who are giving money to people, to the clergy and the TV preachers. And on the surface of it, these TV preachers are so profoundly stupid and profoundly evil. They have no respect whatsoever for the human race at all. All they are doing is ripping the people off, and they themselves are so incredibly ignorant. But that's the Marxist-Leninist, the ideology, is to slowly but surely guide the whole human and the whole Christian world down the tubes, and they've done it. So that today there is virtually nothing of any intrinsic value in churches, in religion today in America and the Western world. Nothing of any intrinsic value whatsoever. There's nothing but making money and all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll stuff that's going on behind the scenes in all religions. But if you haven't been studying this for 56 years, then you're probably not going to notice and probably not going to relate to what I'm talking to. But I'm telling you, the church, religion, and the people in general are in serious last days trouble. We are in a very serious place right now as a human race, and it's very frightening to think about what's coming. So we'll do the best we can to try and wake people up. And if you're interested in my work, go to my website, which is Jordan Maxwell Show. Don't forget the word show, S-H-O-W. Jordan Maxwell Show. .com. That's my website. And on there you will see everything I'm doing or have done. And one thing I am doing right now is I have been working for some time now on putting together what I call a research website. So go on the web and read all about my research website, and if you want to join it, there's a banner there that tells you how to join my research website. And what I'm doing there is I'm just putting all of my research from all over the years that I've been doing this. I have a webmaster who's putting all of my research onto a website so everybody can see what I've been doing for all these years.
I really appreciate everything you mentioned. I'm glad you brought up your website as well and your research society. Please, everybody out there who wants to support Jordan and his work, and educate yourself at the same time with real material, what's really going on. You know.
And I want to hear your program. You've got a great guest coming up real soon.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going on a break, folks, and we'll come back with Max Egan. Thank you very much, Jordan.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.